In this Calm Down Corner edition of the Elevating Early Childhood podcast, we're going to be tackling the hot button topic of directed drawing. So if you've ever wondered, is directed drawing right for my class? Am I missing something? Should I be doing this because everyone else is? Then you're in the right place. But first, let me tell you a little backstory. So about 5 or so years ago, maybe a little longer, I started to see a very disturbing trend pop up online and in classrooms. And this trend is called directed drawing. And at first glance, it may seem really cool because it helps children learn how to draw. But I knew, just like you might have known, that this trend was going to start being pushed down to preschool, and that's where it gets very, very dangerous. So I wanted to take a moment to address it with you because in the preschool level, this practice is not acceptable. We're going to talk about the reasons why today in this episode. You see, it's true. Young children don't always feel very confident when it comes to drawing. And as early childhood professionals, we often feel it's our job to boost their confidence or teach them how to draw. But sometimes our very best intentions are not actually what's best for our students. So here's a story about a student I had. We'll call him Juan. Now, Juan was a very normal child in every way except when it came to writing and drawing. You see, whenever we did writing and drawing activities in the classroom, Juan went from being the perfect student to rolling around on the floor, playing under the table, playing in the bathroom, whining, or putting his head down because Juan did not feel confident as a writer or a drawer. He just didn't have the fine motor skills. Juan had extremely low muscle tone throughout his body and particularly in his hands. He just didn't have the same opportunities that the other children had had to develop those muscles in his body yet. And showing Juan how to draw made him even more frustrated. So here are 3 facts that you should know about how young children develop drawing skills. Fact number 1, learning to draw is a developmental skill, just like learning how to walk is a developmental skill. This means that each individual child will develop the ability to draw at his or her own pace. Now, I'm going to show you a few of the stages of drawing here on the screen, just so we can all get on the same page. So here we have the first stage of drawing, and it's called random scribbling. And that's when the child takes the drawing tool and just makes random marks on the paper, pen or the crayon or whatever it is kind of just going through the air and it occasionally touches the page. That's random scribbling, and that's the first stage. The second stage is called controlled scribbling. That's when the child has some control over the pen, but is not yet using it in the real way it was intended. So they might be able to make some dots on the paper, maybe able to make a few lines. They understand that this thing that they're holding in their hand makes a mark on the paper, and they're not planning out what they're going to draw about yet, but they can just make some marks. They have a little more control rather than just kind of waving the pen around or the marker around in the air, and occasionally it touches the page. This time there's a little bit more control. They don't have to be holding the writing utensil correctly. They don't have to be using their wrist, controlling it with their wrist. They can just be making some controlled scribbles on the paper. And this one typically happens between the ages of 2 and 3 years. And that is just a guideline. That does not mean if your child is 2 and they're not making controlled scribbles yet, that there's something wrong. This happens individually for each child. Those are just some common guidelines to go by. And the first one I forgot to mention was 15 months to 2.5 years. So for our listeners who are just listening in, if you want to see some examples of the random scribbling and the controlled scribbling, then I suggest you check out the YouTube video. Planned scribbling happens generally between 2.5 and 3.5 years, so 2.5 to 3.5 years. And this includes some lines and patterns. So think of it like this. If you see like round scribbles, so on the screen, we show some round scribbles. It looks like they're actually trying to make a round scribble. And then we've got some lines here, some lines in different shapes. And some people could argue that these are letter-like shapes, and that would be fine too. But planned scribbling, that means they had some idea of what they were trying to scribble on the page, formed in their head, right? It doesn't have to be something where they tell you what it is when you ask them. They just had to have planned those marks that they were making on the paper. Sometimes this is referred to as lines and patterns. Okay, and then the next stage comes between the ages of 3 and 5, and that's a rather large age span. You'll know if you've ever taught before. So this is the pictures of objects or people. These are just beginning to emerge, and on the screen I have 2 different pictures of some examples of what it might look like when a child starts to draw a picture or an object. And this is probably the stage that most of our pre-K and preschool teachers are familiar with seeing. Sometimes it's just a round circle. They kind of look like spiders, right? And there's some lines coming out of the circle to indicate limbs. There's usually not a body per se. It's usually just the limbs and the head. And sometimes there's some marks for the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and the hair, but not always. And then sometimes they have really long, skinny legs because those are long lines, and maybe 2 short little sticks for arms. But there generally isn't a body. And sometimes you'll also see other objects come out, maybe 2 circles for a dog or something like that. Little things like that. That is stage 4 out of the 4 that I showed you. Children ages 3 to 5 years. So fact number 2 is about fine motor skills. The ability to draw is quite often tied to how strong the child's fine motor skills are. Not always, but quite often, because the stronger the muscles in the child's hands, the more likely they are to be able to hold the writing tool and manipulate the writing tool in ways that create more legible drawings, right? So that's fact number 2. Fact number 3 is motivation to draw or write. The truth is, young children have to have some form of motivation to engage in these activities. And if we tell them what to draw or write about, we remove that motivation and it becomes a chore or a task. And we all know that chores and tasks are not very enjoyable. So first, we have to help young children understand the importance of drawing and writing. We often do that by showing them how we use writing and drawing as means of communication in our lessons in the classroom. So now let's go back to the story about Juan, that student I had who would roll around on the floor, go to the bathroom play, go to the drinking fountain, whine, put his head down, and do all sorts of things when it came time to draw, because he just didn't have a lot of strength throughout his body. He had low muscle tone everywhere, including his hands, right? So Juan, it turns out, not only did he have that issue going on, but he was really unmotivated because he hadn't seen or had experiences with reading and writing in his home. But one day we discovered that Juan really liked bugs, insects, and amphibians because we stumbled upon a book in our classroom library that he kept going to over and over and over again. And it dawned on me, maybe if we incorporated that into drawing and writing time, when we were drawing and writing together, that would motivate him. And so I invited him to go get his favorite amphibian book about frogs and what they ate. And it was just a really complete, nonfiction book. And he took it to his seat and he attempted to draw some pictures from the book. And then he proceeded to tell me about them. And it was from that first interaction with that book and the connecting it to the writing and drawing that he then went on to become motivated. And he became our nonfiction book expert in the class, right? So if I had another child who was struggling with thinking about how to draw something or write about something that had to do with amphibians or insects, I would say, you know what? Juan's an expert in that area. Why don't you go have a chat with him and see what he says? And that often worked. He would say, oh, I know where there's books about bees. And he would take them over to the bookshelf and get them a book. It was just wonderful. So now that we know how drawing skills develop, let's look at those myths. So myth number 1 is that it's our job as teachers to teach our students how to draw. And directed drawing is one way to do that. So can some children learn how to draw through directed drawing? Yes. But the real question is, should they? Aren't we just creating an artificial solution to an artificial problem? And if directed drawing isn't the answer, then what is? So we're jumping into here what I like to call the morning message. And we're going to pretend that we have all of our students gathered in our large group, and Juan is our helper. And Juan, you'll remember him from my previous story, is our helper today. And he has told us that he likes to walk his dog. Now, this is not an interactive writing podcast episode. So that's something else entirely different. We're not going to get into that here. But let's talk about after I write this sentence with my class during our morning message, how can I then incorporate a little bit of a lesson on how to draw? So first things first, I might ask Juan, when you took your dog for a walk, did you leave your house? And he'll say, yes, I hope. So I'm going to draw the house. And I know that a house is a square. And a square has 4 sides. There's the house. And now it needs a roof. And the roof is a triangle. And I know the triangle has 3 sides. So there's the house. And if I want to add a door, I can add a rectangle. And if I want to add some windows, I can do some more squares with some crosses in the middle. And if I want to add a chimney, I can do another rectangle right there. All right, Juan, now Juan took his dog for a walk. Juan, was there anyone else with you when you did this? No, you took him all by yourself. Okay, so now I need to draw Juan, right? And Juan's a person, and every person has a head, and that's a circle. There's Juan's head. And Juan, do you have 2 eyes? You do. There they are. Oh, and I see he has a nose and a mouth. And he's got some curly hair up here. And he's got his ears. And there's his body, his 2 legs, and his 2 arms. Oh, yes, and he's got some shoes. Okay, I'll put some pants on him. There's a shirt. There we go. Juan's ready to take his dog for a walk. Oh my, and now I need to draw Juan's dog, don't I? Okay, let's see. Juan, is your dog big or small? Oh, he's small. Oh my, he's a teacup Yorkie, is he? There's his head, it's a circle. There's his ear, it's a triangle. There's his body, it's an oval. And there's his, how many legs does your dog have, Juan? He has 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Does he have a tail? A short little tail. There we go. There's Juan's dog. And when you took your dog for a walk, Juan, did you have him on a leash? Oh, you did. So there's the leash. And you were outside. Was there any grass around? Did you take your dog onto the grass? Oh, you did. That's where he likes to do his business, right? Okay. There's the grass. Were there any trees around? I know it's really hot out. So were there some trees, Juan? There were. What color were they? They were green. I'm going to make the top of the tree. There's the green leaves. And then there's the trunk of the tree. There we go. Anybody else think I need to add anything to this picture? Oh, yes. Melanie said she wants to know if it was sunny when you took your dog for a walk, Juan. Was it? It was. Oh, boy. Let's put a sun in the sky. And we know the sun is a big circle. That's right. And there's the sun. Yay, we did it. Now, if you're going to go when we do our drawing today, If you're going to want to make a house, you can look at this drawing to help you. If you want to make a tree or a sun or anything else that we drew here, I'll leave this paper right here on our easel for you to take a look at. It's as easy as that. They helped me answer questions as I drew the picture. I talked about the shapes. I talked through my drawing. And I can tell you that this method works very successfully because not every child was ready for that part of the lesson, were they? Each child can take from it what they want, or what they need, rather, and it can move on from there using that information. So if I have a child who's still in the scribble stage, they just saw a demonstration of a drawing, and maybe they'll start to make the connection between drawings and what we think in our head and what we put on the paper. Maybe that's what they're going to get from it because they're not there yet, right? Maybe another child is understanding the writing a little bit, maybe understanding that the J is for Juan and that picture was for Juan. And when they are drawing and writing, that they should put the same things on the page that match the words. And that's what that child's taking away from it. Okay, on to myth number 2. Myth number 2 is that directed drawings make great bulletin board displays. I will not argue that they probably do make great bulletin board displays, but just because we can doesn't mean we should. I would argue, is our goal as a professional educator to create cute bulletin boards, or is our job as a professional educator to meet the needs of the students in our classroom? Bulletin boards are great, but they're just bulletin boards. They're decoration for the wall. So we don't usually make instructional decisions as professional educators based on what goes on our classroom walls. We make instructional decisions based on the needs of the students in front of us. There are many other ways to make great bulletin board displays that don't involve directed drawing. There's no need to use directed drawing to create bulletin boards. Myth number 3 is that directed drawing is a great way to practice listening skills. I wonder if there are any other times during the day that we could practice listening skills in the preschool and pre-K classroom. Yep, you guessed it. Just about every single minute of our day, it has many opportunities built into it to practice listening skills. We practice listening skills when we have the children come in the classroom and put away their belongings in their cubby. And then we have them practice listening skills when we're asking them to line up. They have to listen for their name or however you're calling them to line up. They have to practice listening skills when we give them 3-step directions at the end of the day. Go get your coat, your backpack, and line up. Things like that. All day long, we're giving kids directions. Okay, it's your turn at the water fountain, and now you go to the end of the line. Every minute of every day that we spend with the students in our classroom in preschool and pre-K is all about developing listening skills. Children develop listening skills through listening through a read aloud. Do we really need to add directed drawing into the mix just to practice listening skills? I don't think so. Myth number 4 is a real pet peeve of mine, and that is you're not a good teacher unless you're doing directed drawing with your kids. No, wrong answer. That plays into the whole comparison game. We're comparing ourselves with the teacher next door because the teacher next door does directed drawing and her bulletin boards are super cute. And if I want to be as well liked as the teacher next door, if I want my parents, the parents of my students rather, to like me and think I'm a good teacher, then I need to do directed drawing too. And that is not true. Directed drawing has absolutely no bearing on how good of a teacher you are. Just let that one go. And myth number 5 is parents love it. That's great. Parents might love it. But let me just say that most parents are not professional educators. And as a professional educator, it's your job to let the parents of your students know how you're meeting their child's needs in the classroom on a daily basis. And believe me, no child's needs have not been met by the absence of directed drawing in the classroom. Yes, it makes a great parent display, but is that the only way that you can appease your parents Is that the only way that your parents can understand that you care about their kids and that you do fun and exciting things in the classroom? Absolutely not. Our job as professional educators is to educate our students, not please the parents or decorate their refrigerators. So to recap, just because we see other teachers doing directed drawing in their classrooms does not mean we have to do it in our classrooms. Learning to draw is a developmental skill that each child learns at his or her own pace. If we try to force all the children in our class to draw these shapes at the same time to create a cute pig or a cute panda or a cute bear or insert name of animal here, then aren't we just trying to force them to do something they may or may not be developmentally ready to do? Why not embed opportunities for them to see drawing in action during your morning message so that each child can take from it what they need at that time, rather than forcing all the children to do the same cookie cutter, what it boils down to, art project really is what it is. It really is product art. So when it comes to teaching smarter, not harder, just ditch the directed drawing, stay in your own lane, don't worry about pleasing the parents with cute bulletin boards, and just focus on the students in front of you and meeting their needs. I hope this Calm Down Corner episode puts your mind at ease. Until next time, I'm Vanessa Levin. Onward and upward.